Welcome, 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 welcome.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, it is, got to be here last night with a smaller group, but again, just to be here feels like such a refuge and so much where I want to be and what I want to be doing. And usually that is the case, luckily, since I have to show up here every Wednesday. But really, when coming off a month-long retreat, there's just a kind of different sense of what is real, for one, what matters, and where there's a possibility of, finding some sense of like that precious intimacy with yourself, with your being, with your own heart, with your own mind. So it feels very special to be here tonight. It is my day of birth, which is a celebration, but also just this momentum coming off long retreat. And it brings such amazing opportunity to see yourself so clearly. And I wanted us tonight to kind of revisit like the very core essence of the text that we're working on, which is the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. And the core essence of that text is bodhicitta. It's such a beautiful word, and translation, the awakened heart for the sake of all beings. And in the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, we're learning these tools, these methods, these different ways of kind of meeting whatever life is offering us in order that we can kind of train this body, heart, and mind to be available for others. And yet this piece on bodhicitta, even though the first 2 or 3 chapters is really kind of extolling the virtues of it, it can be somewhat tricky to really feel bodhicitta. This as an idea, it makes perfect sense. It's beautiful. It has its own poetry, right? Like, of course, we want to, as we meet and recognize the suffering that is literally everywhere around us, in our own lives, the lives of those we care about and others, that natural response and desire to care. But to kind of actually feel it, it's a really interesting kind of way in. And so I'm going to just share a little bit from retreat and invite us to do a couple different practices to make our way there and kind of reestablish this commitment with that term, with that idea, and with that feeling of bodhicitta. When you're on longer retreat, or what I noticed on longer retreat, I was talking with Mace's partner, Pamela, who's also done longer retreat, and she's like, "You keep saying it was really hard. Is there another word?" I was like, challenging? And she said, "It sounds like it was really powerful." And I was like, "I like that word." Okay. And because it's not hard in the way that, relative reality is hard, like, being late and being annoyed and being worried. It's hard and in this other way of kind of having this front row seat to just the kind of roaring clamor of mundane mind, right? Just all the habitual patterns of the ways we try to control and the ways we're trying to fix and the way we're judging and trying to compare. Like, you just are so poignantly aware of that incessant kind of rumble. And then it gets better because as you stay longer, you get into the layers below that kind of mundane roar of like everyday controlling, judging, comparing, and fixing into, in some ways, the root feelings of what generates that clamor. And for me, the kind of basement feels are, doubt, fear, heartbreak, and just you get into those, and there's just this kind of undefendedness of the heart when you're in such concentrative stillness so long, right? You can kind of hear everything as it emerges. See, just like okra. You can kind of hear everything in the stillness. And so you can get, just this deep tenderness. Like you are aware that this is your fear, your doubt, your heartbreak, but it becomes a bit less kind of personally entrenched so that you can kind of make your way around it and find a lot of care and interest with it. And one thing that really came up for me in that is how important it is to know how to be kind to ourselves. And again, like at one point on retreat, when I was thinking, I did a lot of rehearsing what I would say about retreat, which is ironic because then when I was preparing for today, I was like, I have no idea what I'm gonna say. This is gonna be impossible. How am I gonna explain this? But in one of the times, I was like, every single thing that you've rehearsed in your mind is so cliche. It's like such the typical spiritual insight, but it's so different when you feel it. When you really feel it, like, oh, I really need to know how to be kind to myself. Like, I actually really need to know how to be kind. And these practices of kindness, of metta especially, they really become a lifeline. Like this way that we're kind of pulled out of that clamoring or that kind of more deep rumbling of our core experiences. And so I wanted us to start with metta practice tonight and really thinking, specifically about the purpose of metta, the kind of original purpose. Loving kindness has such an, I don't know about you all, the first time I heard that term, I was like, that's a real nothing burger. Like, what is loving kindness? Coming from a psychological point of view, at that time, wasn't something in the literature. I was like, loving kindness? Like, could we just say love or kindness? Like, why are we doing these together? Like, had a lot of resistance and cynicism around this as a practice. But that translation I love of just like that friendliness, that just base friendliness. And now I love the term loving kindness. I mean, I'd probably get a license plate if I had enough motivation to do so. I think it's great. But when we think of the actual kind of origin or root or source of this practice, it's not only, this friendliness, but it's this real yearning that we could not only feel happy, but know the true causes of happiness. And so the difference there, like, I really want you to be happy, Ulysses. I really want that, It's easy to want that for you. And yet, if I have my wisdom eyes and my wisdom heart when I say that, it's in order for you to be happy, you have to know what leads to your happiness. And I want you to continue on the paths towards things that lead you to happiness. And not just this temporary, movement towards what in the moment feels good. And so I really love that piece of it. And the phrases, I was at Spirit Rock for the month, and so that tradition and that lineage, so beautiful coming from the Theravadan side, and the phrases there, which I really appreciate, they kind of start with this, may you be free or feel protected from inner and outer harm. And I remember when we sat retreat the year before for the week long, and that phrase, there's something so sweet that we are wishing, again, not just happiness, but the causes and conditions of happiness, free from inner and outer harm. So beautiful. And then this, may you know the true causes of happiness and have a calm mind. Can you even imagine a calm mind at like a sustained level all the time? Such a beautiful wish, right? For ourselves and others. Just at baseline, how are you? I'm calm. Like, that would be so beautiful. And so to kind of like, again, it's not just the words or phrases, it's like connecting with the yearning for that. and to really feel in the heart, how good, how nourishing, how enriching that would be. And the next one, which is may you be healthy and strong, right? So may there be like this sense of the body being well, the mind being strong. And then the last one, which is may you live with support and ease, which, oh my God, we need support. We can't do it alone. It's not enough to be happy, right? We actually have to feel like the world is rising up to meet us in our basic needs, right? May you be supported. So looking at the loving kindness phrases in that way. So I'd love us to take a moment and think of someone that we want to extend this practice to. And I know sometimes that can be tricky, like we're not quite sure who, maybe there's a lot of people we want to choose from, or maybe there's no one we think we want to choose. And one thing I'll say about that is we can choose anyone, and they certainly won't be perfect all the time. We choose someone we want to be happy and well, not because all the time we think they're so wonderful and easy and great, but because there's someone like all of us who deserves happiness, and someone we can really imagine the goodness of them being happy and knowing the causes of happiness. So it can be helpful to really think of one person, and sometimes I think first thought, best thought, or maybe you give yourself just a moment more. Think about who you want to offer this practice to. And in these practices, there's the words, which really matter, the visualization, which is really helpful. We're going to imagine this person, and the feeling, right? And the feeling of it. So it's actually a really wonderful concentrative practice. This isn't just like goofing off in meditation. It really helps us with concentration and attention. We have the words, we have the image, we have the feeling, and there we are using the breath to extend it. So does everybody have someone in mind? Does anyone need any clarification or help in that piece? Okay, so let's take a moment and find a posture that feels supportive. And we can begin with this sense of support, not only from the body and the body posture, but the support from the ground beneath us. We can feel actually the metta of this ground beneath us. We are being supported and cared for. In fact, everything that we are made up of at one point came from the earth below. At some more distant time, hopefully, we will return in some form or another back to the earth below. And in this wonderful and wild sojourn above the earth, we can still rely on it for its ongoing, unremitting support. And feel and invite the support of the sky above us tonight, here, the center making its way towards storms and rain. But feeling more into what is above and around, and extending infinitely behind those clouds, the support of vast spaciousness. Whether it's your first time here or you come here regularly, feel the support of some shared values and community, folks coming together for the Dharma in practice. And though, of course, this room and friends online, wonderful humans, we're actually feeling the support of thousands of years of beings coming together in practice. With this sense of support around us, of course, there's going to be thoughts and memories or maybe dullness, but we just keep coming back. Make this sense of support even more intimate through the breath. So finding and feeling the breath as this core support, a way to anchor and ground ourselves moment by moment to this body, to this experience. And we pay attention to what we like and enjoy. So see if you can find an enjoyable part of the breath. Maybe the enjoyment of the breath coming in. Maybe the enjoyment of a gentle hold of the breath before we exhale. Maybe the sensations of breath at the nostrils or chest or belly. See if there's somewhere you can find that quality of pleasantness in the breath. And allow the mind to find refuge there. That simple, unadorned enjoyment of breath. For just a couple more moments staying here. Really noticing and possibly rejoicing each time we find our way back to the breath. Taking a moment now to notice the experience throughout the body. Noticing areas of sensation in the body and finding our way to an awareness of the body in this moment. Maybe we recognize certain areas that are carrying a residue from something that happened earlier. Maybe other habitual areas of holding or tightness. And letting our attention and awareness just very kindly meet whatever is here in the whole body. And we'll shift our attention and awareness now from the body, breath, into the mind and imagination. And we bring to mind this being who we'd like to practice metta for this evening. And as much as is possible, really bringing them to mind, almost imagining their presence in front of us. Imagining them happy, well, thriving. Taking a moment to notice what it feels like to be in the presence of this being. And even starting this process of metta, feeling that desire for happiness, imagining the happiness of this other being. And as I say these phrases, you can imagine extending this wish and care directly towards this being. Again, this practice really helps us steady the mind and the heart. So as much as possible, keeping ourselves close to imagining this and sustaining this quality of care and kindness that's really imbued in these words. May you feel safe and protected from inner and outer harms. May you know the true causes of happiness and have a calm mind. May you be healthy and strong as much as is possible. May you live a life of ease with support. Taking a moment and noticing the body, seeing if we can feel this opportunity to really be in the body and the heart and the mind. One more time with these phrases. May you feel protected and safe from inner and outer harms. May you know the true causes of happiness and have a calm mind. May you be healthy and strong. May you feel supported and at ease in life. It's okay if this is full of feeling. It's okay if this is just words and the feeling isn't quite there. Just one more moment imagining the joy and happiness of this being, receiving these wishes, experiencing this safety, this happiness, this health, this ease. And then releasing the images and the words and allowing ourselves to rest in a sense of more spacious awareness. And feeling the field of metta or loving kindness all around us, in the body, in the heart, in the mind. Again, noticing the body and what's present here now. And then we shift to once again bringing this being to mind, smiling in front of us. And this time they are wishing the phrases to us. So bringing this being to mind and imagining them wanting our happiness, our feeling of safety, our health, our ease. So imagining them there and receiving these phrases from them. May you feel safe and protected from inner and outer harms. May you know the causes of happiness and have a calm mind. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease and support. And softening into this receiving of loving kindness. Softening through the eyes, the chest, the belly. And one more time, bringing this being to mind, imagining their sense of care that they could have for us, and receiving these phrases from them. May you feel safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May you have a happy mind, know the causes of happiness, and have a calm mind. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease and support. And then again, releasing the images and the words and taking a moment to just rest in this field of loving kindness, this body, heart, and mind of loving kindness. Thank you for your practice. So here on Wednesdays, we have this beautiful opportunity to constellate in community in a different, fresh way every time. And part of doing so means that we come into these shared ways of being together so that we can connect more freely. And holding one another with a sense of real care and compassion and kindness. So that when we are speaking, we're speaking with this kind of heart and mind, compassion and kindness. When we're listening to others, we're listening with compassion and kindness. And doing our best to be thoughtful about what we share and how we share. Not only the impact it might have on us, but on those around us. How's that sound, everybody? Yeah, great. So, yeah, be curious if anyone had any reflections on that version of a metta practice. I find it to be like a little bit sneaky, because you're like, I'm doing it for them. What? They're doing it for me? You know, like there's a little, if I told you, it might not have been quite that effect. It's a little disarming, I find, because you're like, no, wait, oh. And I found it to be like quite effective, actually, in this interesting way. It's still just me on me, right? Still just you in your imagination. And yet that quality of imagining, receiving after having extended, there's something so natural about that, spoiler alert, that really helps us understand bodhicitta, right? That kind of natural giving, receiving. I don't know where the mic is. Do you have it? Oh, would you like to kick us off?
Well, you already did. I loved loving kindness. It was one of my first practices that brought me into this world, I guess. And I've never had it done back to me like that. And it was wonderful. I really loved it. And it was very sweet. And it brought a smile to my face. And so much so that I was like, oh, I better remember equanimity.
I'm having too much attachment.
Because I really like this. And then I started thinking about the 4 Brahma Viharas, or the immeasurables.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, maybe this is an immeasurable quality. So maybe I should lean more into that and not be like, oh, you need to stop this. Like, this feels too good and too sweet, and you shouldn't get to experience it or something. And
Wow.
so I really thought, well, maybe I should lean into the immeasurable aspect and just.
Yeah.
But it was very nice, and I really liked this format.
Thank you. Yeah, beautiful, Cajun. I think what you're also highlighting is, I mentioned that it's a very good practice for concentration, obviously for heart flexibility, but in this case also for insight, right? Of like, oh, this feels too good. I shouldn't. Wait, shouldn't I? Like, who's saying this, right? And is that wisdom speaking, or is that like a habitual pattern of, oh, I can't feel this. I shouldn't. This should be about others, right? And because there is such nourishment from receiving. And that is so interesting with the Guide to the Bodhisattva way of life, is it's all about training this mind, this heart, and this body, even though everything you're doing is in mind for others, right? And we're kind of inverting that in this practice. We start for others, but then we bring it to ourselves, and you see the way it can actually uplift our energy. So, yeah. And I think the wisdom of bringing equanimity, within all of the practices, compassion especially, right? Without that equanimity, we can really fall into the despair. When we have the equanimity with loving kindness, we can avoid getting that kind of juicy attachment to feeling good, right? That ends up being more surface level or superficial. But yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, anyone else?
Yeah, that was really disarming. Wasn't expecting it. I also did something to myself, which made it even more disarming, which is I struggled to maintain just one person at the beginning.
Yeah.
But the phrases evoked people. Every phrase felt like it applied to a different person. It was really easy to bring them to mind. But it would be when you shared one of the parts of the prayer, they brought that person to mind, and another person came up, and it felt very natural. But also I could feel how the giving almost felt like, yeah, I'm doing this thing, but it's lower energy. And when you flipped it, it felt more like, oh, it would be rude not to receive this. Like, I gotta be here now. I was struggling to be present until that flip.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened is that for some reason, people who came to mind were exes. So then when you flipped it, it was
so
like,
kind.
I don't know why. Yeah, not all of them.
Noted.
But when you flipped it, that was this moment of just like, the reflection was that the truest test of having almost, in a way, like succeeded at making someone else feel that calmness is that they would be able to reciprocate it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and the many people coming up, especially with your active creative mind, not surprising, but it's nice, the one person, because I hear what you're saying. There's like different people who those qualities might feel more kind of, on the mark for. But it is so nice to have that one person. And yeah, it is, it's such a great practice to do for people we don't see often, actually, right? And that in some cases, it might not be right to see that person, right? Like you can still care for them, but actually you don't want to be in ongoing relatedness. So yeah, it can be very powerful. And it's interesting, it brought you more to attention to receive too. So there's no per se like wrong way to do it, So I think it's just interesting to notice. And once I, started doing this practice of turning it back, you also can recognize certain people who you receive it from, there's a different quality, So you can kind of use that as well as opportunity. And then also notice, like, a lot of the people in your life, like, they are giving that to you. They're not doing the phrases because that might be awkward, right? But can we receive it in the same way? Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, this is a hard, particularly hard. We talked about this a couple months ago. That's much easier for me to send
Yes.
love and compassion to others than to receive it. And you've suggested a couple of things, and this was so kind of I've been noticing that I fight off things a lot. That I'm spending a lot of time, whether it's the cold weather or whether it's compliments or whether it's whatever. I'm kind of like, no. And so internally, while this person was sending it back to me, I was thinking, no, but I'm this, I'm that. I was thinking of all of the reasons why I don't deserve it. And the words from the other person changed into, well, even so, may you feel strong and supported and healthy. So it's sort of like acknowledging that this is just a part of me that that I have.
Yeah.
And even with it,
Yeah.
the wish for love and support and kindness was present, and I just really appreciated it. I didn't have to fight it off. It didn't matter at that point.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I appreciate
And
that.
that's exactly, and I know we've talked about this before too, is, the Dharma is such a beautiful structure. And in some ways, it's very like simple. And then we get to make it ours, and make it personal for us, like our personal Dharma. Big theme for me on the retreat that I'll talk a little more about. And so to find those words that unlock for you, beautiful, just really, and it's like, we are allowed and permitted to create not only our own phrases, but like our own mantras, right? We can find that way, there's, it's so interesting that there are these certain words, that really do like cast a spell on us. It's like the power of those words unlocks something beyond rational, and that's kind of magical. And when we're open, and just even so, like what a simple spell, Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
I saw a few hands go up.
Hi, I'm brand new here, kind of came in blind, didn't read anything, just kind of showed up. But I have to say, like, that opening in the meditation was amazing. Like, not to sound, I think I'm self-conscious about feeling judged or like I'm too woo-woo, but like, there's just this piercing white light that was present.
Yeah.
And I just felt just held in the community space that you mentioned during the meditation. So it was just so beautiful. And just I was like, what is this place? Where did I come to? And then just on the metta meditation, it was a surprise when it was flipped back, because I, like you, have trouble receiving love. Like, I love giving out love, and I just felt like something kind of like be blown wide open.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know, it felt like my body of energy just expanded and was just absorbing all this like love. And it reminded me in hindsight, I think when you were talking about like this Ram Dass meditation or like this talk that he had on love, and it was like when you love someone, it's actually a handle into like this ever-present like energy of love. It's not actually like that person itself. It's just like a handle into that. So it kind of reminded me of that, because it's like when you're loving someone, it kind of like opens you up to receiving. So it was so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. So glad to have you here. And, it is, obviously you have language and access to subtle body, right? And these practices are not just mental events, right? The mind and body together. And, having these both like felt sensations or the insights or the, even in the visual arena can be quite, just quite interesting for us to track, as long as it's not distracting. And it can be a feeling that's quite affirming, that sense of the body feeling bigger than the body, or that sense of light, like literal light or just lightness. So just trustworthy. Yeah, thank you.
When you alluded to the origins of loving kindness, that friendliness practice, it had me think about how, all the bhikkhus in the Buddha's time were in the forest, and they were being like assaulted by these spirits and ghosts, these malevolent spirits in the forest. And the Buddha's advice was to practice loving kindness towards these beings, and just practice, so that there's this always this sense for me to practice it towards the people that I'm afraid of in some way, or that I'm disturbed by in some way. They're definitely included in that practice. And so when you were saying, okay, well, think of somebody, there's a couple of people that came to mind, but then when we actually sat and started to practice, and this is going back to another traffic car thing, immediately this person came up that scared the shit out of me on the drive over here, because they walked right in front of my car, and I was like, what? And it scared me, and I was pissed and scared. And then when they came up as the focus of this meditation, I was like, okay, I'm just going to really send these phrases to that person, and it was super powerful. And then when you flipped it, I was like, oh man, really? This person, that was super powerful too.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. And I love that, it is such a great practice for what we feel threatened by, or even what we feel kind of like so-called neutral about, like really it's indifferent. Like, this person doesn't matter. They have of no value to me. Like, all the people we don't see, such a great practice too. And then to imagine those folks caring for us. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I mean, this, again, it's like when I was, retreat is so funny because I often just felt like emptied out. I was like, and this, I know, again, excuse the cliche sounding, but I was like, wait, who am I? Like, what? Like, who is this? It was like so kind of confusing to kind of remember where I'd come from, anything I'd done in the past. Like, it was really like, I was like very like stripped out and confused. And like just to have that like coming back to who I am and what I am. And it was very palpable, again, cliche. It's like, well, there's love here. So maybe I'm love, and not always like a really warm meta love. I was saying to some of my friends and folks who know me well and look close at my face, I was like, are the creases deeper? Because like I cried like kind of nonstop, like the whole retreat. And they were like my tears. I think like definitely other people in the hall, I was crying their tears, that porousness. Other people in the past of my life, and so who knows, like there was just like kind of that constant tears. And then, even in being back, like today I really have felt so loved on my birthday, being here and like just moving through the world. And And it's like the tears of, that like, wow, it's so joyful and beautiful. And then the tears of, some people don't feel this. And then the tears of, well, all of us are gonna die. It's like, it's just like, all right. That tenderness and that openness and like refinding enough structure so that you can kind of hold, because I think when we do strip down and get that still and that quiet and that essential, then it's hard to know, like even in a way, like how do we even like pick ourselves up from just wanting to feel and be that little loving being. There's such an innocence to it. There's no more questions. I'll kind of keep going a little here, but thank you all for the sharing. Oh,
Can I say one last thing?
please, yeah.
Sorry. I just wanted to say quickly, happy birthday, and also, I had a concussion and I had all these headaches, and when you said like, feel the metta from everybody, I like felt my headache dissipate, so thank you, everyone.
We got you. Aw, that's wonderful to hear. Yeah, I mean, yeah, random aside that I wasn't gonna talk about, but why not? I had like 4 or 5 days where the jaw, like not even like tight, just pressure, tongue tight pressure, then it's not as though I had any trauma to the body there. Like there's so much energetically, right? So even if we have some kind of physical pain, what we wrap around it, which often is part of like, what's wrong with me? When will this get over? Why doesn't anyone else have it, right? It contributes to extra pressure. So it makes sense, like there is obviously a real headache for a real thing, but then that added piece. And then something like metta can really be part of the body doing what it does, which is heal, right? That's what it's here to do. The jaw had no natural thing and like really didn't go away for 4 or 5 days, and it made me have a lot of saliva, which was very awkward. And when you're in a hall and everyone's really quiet, like going like, it's like, I felt like the biggest like loser, Like, everyone's like, you could hear like a pin drop. There's 100 people, and I just kept having to swallow. I was like, oh my God, I'm the worst meditator. I was like, bring love to that, and to your jaw, and to whatever's moving through. And yeah, it's just so interesting, these kind of more subtle energies that move through. Yeah, and I think one of the analogies that came up for me, and this, what's going on longer retreat is what happens also in our daily practice. It's not like it's a million different, it's just a different kind of magnification. And I think when we sit down to practice, our mind seeks out like what's vulnerable in the way that like, when you have like a little cut in your mouth somewhere and your tongue just like keeps going back to it. You're like, that's not gonna help. Like, oh, yeah, no, I bit it there. Yeah. And it's like that kind of compulsion back towards trying to like care, but the way that our mind like, the way, and it's a little different for all of us, but the way that we've learned to meet fear, heartbreak, doubt, uncertainty, anger, it's this like unrelenting habitual pattern. And so you can really start to see in such a kind of clear way, that kind of surface level desire to just try to make things okay, and how much it takes you away from yourself. Let's see here. One thing that also, which I think the metta practice is so beneficial for, and again, kind of this bridge with bodhicitta, is, you go on retreat or you come here to practice, and there's no such thing as like doing it alone. Even if you're sitting, in a room by yourself trying to practice, all of your relational content is there. And there's something so valuable about, in the context of retreat with other people, it's very explicit that it's kind of a relational field. And then there are teachers, which which is like such a relief, right? There's someone there who's like, has this ability to help you with the structure and with the teachings and, you know, remind you why you're there when you've forgotten who you are. You don't know why you're there, and like everything's kind of a referenceless mess. And, you know, I also, some of you know, I do a bit of practices, kind of these earthbound practices with the land and working with specific plants like bay laurel and sagebrush. And in Spirit Rock, there's just such a beautiful connection to the natural world. And so much of the Buddha's story of enlightenment and his whole life of teaching is so intertwined with the natural world, right? He awakened under a tree. They slept in gardens, they slept in forests. It was always such a big part of the practice, was this ecological belonging and beingness with the natural world. And interestingly, I sometimes found that hall, right, filled with silent people, not relationally warm. And as I was moving through what I understand to be quite a process of purification, some of these layers of fear and doubt, I really wanted and sought out the stability and comfort of the natural world. And it feels like such a beautiful opportunity for what's so natural to us, which is to return to a sense of interbeing with the natural world. You know, that's not woo-woo, that's just old school, right? We want to call it. Like that is how we, and many places still around the world have that sense of relatedness. And just so beautiful to be able to experience, you know, like as I was guiding us, like the support of the ground. And that guidance that I offered you all was, you know, I did a couple days of practice where I would do a whole practice period, like laying down on the earth and just releasing everything, releasing whatever thoughts, memories, images, difficulties, mundane mind, just imagining it was releasing. And really had that palpable felt sense, the earth is here to support me. It made me, I'll go back there, this in-between time, it's still here to support me. And just finding, you know, kind of like I was saying to Tom, like what was the way that the Dharma wanted to live through me? It wasn't always in the hall in that same way and in that same structure. And kind of finding, for me, my own wisdom with like, what were the qualities I was seeking? Some of you are familiar with Vajrayana practice in Tibetan Buddhism. And that practice, you know, it's really kind of foundational core is devotion. That word is problematic and difficult for a lot of people in contemporary times for very good reason. But I like to understand it as kind of the humble realization that it's not all about you and it's much bigger, and you surrender to that. And then when you do, there's almost this availability of gratitude for what is here. And I kept finding that sense of such deep devotion with and to and for the natural world. And when you do devotional practices, often in Vajrayana, you're really kind of imagining these beautiful deities, not only to help you concentrate, like we were doing in our metta practice, but also to imagine that those qualities could be here. So in the same way, if there's a practice with the natural world, we could imagine ourselves kind of bringing in the stability of the mountain, right? The spaciousness, like awe of the sky. And for me, the wind became a great teacher because A, there was a lot of wind, and B, like that whole energy of movement called, you know, lung or lung wind energy. That's the upwelling of thoughts that happens like when we're kind of in this agitated state, when we're trying to settle down, and being able to then watch, you know, the little hawk, you know, actually tuck in its wings and then extend its wing and then move back. Like it knows how to ride that wind, right? We can ride our own thought stream that's coming through, but also, you know, we can then kind of fall back and just be the sky. So there's just this kind of, you know, freshness when we aren't imposing an idea of how we relate to whatever it is we're experiencing, the natural world or otherwise. that can be so potent, and it made me really feel and recognize, and what I would wish for you all, that like the Dharma is everywhere, 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 everywhere. Like these teachings of, wanting stability or wanting to understand movement of the mind, like we see it reflected in the world around us so beautifully. And yeah, kind of inviting in those wisdom qualities as we would from this great deity like a Tara deity, inviting in the wisdom qualities of the natural world can be so, so beautiful. And then here, pages got a little out of order. So, what's interesting about, again, kind of bodhicitta is what we see in the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life is all these very specific instructions in how to work with this wild elephant of the mind, right? This like trampling of the mind, incessant way that it kind of pulls us here and pulls us there, often with what are described as these defiled or difficult or disturbing emotions. And in order for us to really offer bodhicitta, so to offer this sense of deep care and like that wish for another to be free from suffering, know the causes of suffering or the causes of happiness, we have to be offering it from a place that is in some ways kind of pure and good. So you think about, I had a real sense, there's some beautiful streams there on the land, especially with all the rain, and that there's a quality of like bodhicitta in these little streams. They are just gentle, always moving, just this very cool, like easy area to be in. And you wouldn't want to offer something like a metaphor of, you wouldn't want to offer the water from a dirty stream, right? You wouldn't want to offer a bodhicitta that's not coming from a heart and a mind that's actually stable and at ease enough to offer it well. Not saying that, you need to be a perfectly enlightened being to offer compassion, because good luck, but the intention and the reason why we work with the difficult, disturbing, and defiled emotions is in some ways to kind of go upstream and clear it up. So then what we're offering becomes even kind of more precious and more pure. Because it really is this confusing, like, at least for me on retreat of, wait, how is it I'm thinking about all beings if I'm just here, like so far away from everyone? Like, how is this related? How is us sitting quietly actually the way that we support and help others? And, I know conceptually, but to really feel this sense of how much more I could create a mind that is truly abundant, exalted, immeasurable, as is described, when I was able to start kind of removing some of the pollution upstream. And the very simple instruction that I was following for that is, when these difficult emotions arise, and they do a lot, sometimes with story, right? Sometimes with the like memory of something past that was hurtful or harmful, sometimes an imagined future thing that will happen that's hurtful or harmful, and the emotion is really there, that we give it all the kind of attention it needs in the moment, and notice not the story of it, but the felt sense of it. And then we really release into that awareness or that openness with it, over and over and over. So I was talking about this in our small group last night. We need like every method that's kind of available through meditation, so that ability to concentrate so we can actually recognize the sensation but not get pulled into the thought. But we also need to have that cultivated sense of awareness, like a place to bring the difficult energy of that emotion for it to kind of, as is described in the text, like traditionally, It's the snake that uncoils itself once it's released from the confines of the basket. Right? That's the mind that can like unfold itself, the emotion that can unwind itself when it has space. Because often the emotion is happening and the basket is our mind trying to contain and control. And instead, like coming to what is described as this natural state of mind. And so then what's actually needed, or kind of what we are hopefully able to start sensing and seeing and feeling in our own practice, is what spacious awareness actually feels like. That we actually can have that as a direct experience, as part of what we are. And so then I got this whole thing of like, whoa, what is awareness? Where is awareness? You know, like, is it, you know, just this real wonderful kind of stripping down and stripping away of the concept of it into a more, you know, can I enter into this field and be able to find it? And what was a little surprising to me is when I was able to find it, like kind of most reliably, was actually right at the moment when I was able to release into heartbreak. So the heart, I remember there was one day, I was there for my dad's 91st birthday. And so on his birthday, I was practicing for him. And I had this sense of, my God, I hope I get to see him again. You know, you just don't, 91, you don't know. And then I thought, God, I wish I could be there with him today. But what actually came forth was, there are people with him today who love him, and that my family in all of its dysfunction and weirdness, you know, the friends and people we have, and we are loved. And like to be able to receive that kind of gratitude, it broke my heart completely open. You know, tears and tears and tears, but that's fine. There's so many tissues around me. It's all good. No sobbing, just like streaming. I was like, could have like harvested salt for days. Like, so the tears, you know, but it would never last that long. It would stop. And then just this unbelievable sense of openness, right? Pure spacious awareness. And I was like, oh. So when there is, you know, that opening through the heart, in some ways like a surrender through gratitude and like the kind of heartbreaking beauty of feeling love, awareness is more available. And so I think it's, again, with awareness, it can get so conceptual. There's so many texts on it. I'll read a couple excerpts from my favorite texts on it. But to find our own like personal way there and like feeling of it and where it emerges. And so that kind of, that little like insight into awareness and kind of how essential it is for us to develop that sense of intimacy with awareness. Before I go on, I'd love to know if there's any questions on that, because I know that's already kind of a big, a big chunk, just this idea of how we can feel into awareness and how we can bring some of the difficult, disturbed emotions into that space of awareness. Okay, you'll let me know if there are.
I have a question.
Okay.
I just thought of it right now.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
Sorry to
It's
interrupt
nice to see you, Grace.
Oh, good to see you too, Eve. Happy birthday.
Thanks.
So the horrible, difficult emotions are distraction. So I will be meditating, and then distraction overwhelms me, and then I want to say no.
Yeah.
I don't want to be distracted, but then I do want to be distracted, and then I'm continuously distracted, and I cannot focus, and I cannot do what I'm doing because I'm just so
Yes.
completely upset, and I won't focus.
Yes. Sounds familiar. And I love the way you say it, and I'm sorry because it's hard. You know, I mean, it is. I think it's. I mean, when I say retreat was hard, it was hard for that reason, that I would see so clearly where I didn't want my mind to be, and it would persist and persist, right? And so I think, you know, one thing I was gonna share is there's these methods that we have. So concentrative awareness, these heart practices, insight, being curious about the why, and then spacious awareness. And those methods are very skillful, but actually they need to lead us to a real like shift in perspective. And so it's almost like being able to see over and over and over how distraction pulls us away. We then become curious about the nature of that distraction. And, what is it? So I had a lot of time trying to plan when I was going to take a walk and like what kind of tea I was going to have. Like after the first 2 weeks, when most of the stuff had kind of off-gassed, that was like the real hot topics. And they were just as distracting as like, will I ever find the, true like deep heart longing love of my life, right? That was there. But then more importantly, like, what about getting extra dates and cheese from the snack fridge? It's like it doesn't matter the content. It doesn't matter the content, but like that habit of being distracted, like, and again, I'm not telling you what it is for you, but what it was for me to see is I really want to control. Like I want to feel like I can make this world fit what feels good for me. Like I want to have a sense of control. And I have an illusion that if I know when I'm going to get tea and when I'm going to take a walk, I'll be safe, I'll be happy, and I'll feel loved. So there's like this, it's not just that the distraction is there. Like you said, the distraction is really compelling, but we kind of have to go to the root of the distraction and what we're trying to accomplish with it. And then again, over and over, I don't know how long I love the term, you have to exhaust the karmic momentum. I'm like, that sounds right. This needs a lot of exhausting because there's a lot of momentum. And the karmic momentum, at least in my case, of believing that I can create a world that is safe through planning. It's problematic because sometimes it works, right? Like it really is nice that I wasn't so hungry after the last chant because I had those extra dates and cheese in my pocket. Like that was good planning. But then it's like taking me out of my sit is like really a ripoff. And, like the ripoff is I'm not there for the unfolding of the moment that's happening. And like the person that might be like emerging or whatever might be emerging. So I have to kind of get that in the Theravadan tradition, they call it the revulsion, like I have to really like become almost like disgusted by what I'm losing through that habit of distraction. And then also to kind of, and this for me, I did sunrise and sunset kind of devotional practices with the sunrise and the sunset. And one thing I really noticed in a lot of those sunrise practices, I was asking, for any being's help, like the winged beings, the four-legged beings, the trees, the wind, the sun, the mountain, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, like all my teachers, like please. And that level of trying to surrender was actually exactly the trust I needed to let go of the false belief that anything out there was going to help me be okay in here. And at the root of so many of our distractions, there is this like idea that something out there is far more important and compelling than being right here. And so that's why you hear, and like, again, I'm going to read a couple I brought don't tell any of the Theravadan people. I brought a couple books, and I wrote in my journal a lot. Spirit Rock, that's like not the tradition. And I'm so down for them in their container. And like, I love that that's what they want, but the books are so good for me. I brought this book that we did at, I think in 2021, maybe, Kate? I don't know if you remember, but I can't remember, but it's a compilation of Tibetan masters put together by Mathieu Ricard on all aspects of Buddhist practice, including the mind. and something they say all the time, I'll just read one of these, is really this essential need to recognize the illusory nature of all phenomena. I mean, what a mouthful, right? And then you actually start to have a sense of that. Let me read a couple of these. I hope this doesn't seem too off topic, Grace, but I think this is the thing, is like distraction isn't just like this thing we can like find and get rid of. Like, it actually, following it like all the way down is what helps us understand this habitual pattern of mind and the kind of like core delusion. So I really over and over and over kept coming back to that idea of delusion, because it seemed to, I love the term the mind of hope and fear, which many teachers use, and really like typifies the craving, the aversion, that whole cycle of trying to avoid difficulty and move towards what feels good. And that it's a lot of it though can kind of be, it's almost like pierced by that word delusion, because it's really not true in this moment. A lot of it is very old news. Okay, so there's a couple of these. I would read mostly 2 of these chapters over and over and over, because I had a sense that they were pointing to an experience I was having. So some of you may know Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, beautiful teacher, Mathieu Ricard, who's a scholar, a teacher, an author, a humanitarian activist. He was the longtime student of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche until his death in, I think, the early 90s or the late 80s. And it's a bit of a longer stanza, but I think you'll find its benefit. The mind has, in general, 2 aspects, stillness and movement. Sometimes the mind is quiet and free from thoughts, like a calm pool. This is stillness. Eventually, thoughts are bound to arise in it. This is movement. In truth, however, although in a sense there is a movement of thoughts within the stillness, there is actually no difference between these 2 states. Just as the nature of stillness is voidness, the nature of movement is also voidness. Stillness and movement are merely 2 names for the one mind. Most of the time we are unaware of our state of mind and pay no attention to whether it is still or moving. While you're meditating, a thought might arise in your mind, the idea of going shopping, for instance. You're aware of the thought and just let it dissolve by itself, that's the end of it. But if you remain unaware of what is happening and let the thought grow and develop, it will lead to a second thought, the thought of having a break from your practice. And in no time at all, you'll find yourself actually getting up and going to the market. Soon, many more thoughts and ideas arise. How you're going to buy this, sell that, so forth. It's like so relieving. I was like, oh my God, yes. By this point, you'll be very long away from your meditation. It's completely natural that thoughts keep arising. The point isn't to try to stop them. It would be impossible anyway, but to liberate them. And this is done remaining in a state of simplicity, which lets thoughts arise and vanish again without stringing onto them any further thoughts. When you no longer perpetuate the movement, they dissolve without leaving any trace. When you no longer spoil the state of stillness with mental fabrications, you can remain in this natural serenity without any effort. Innumerable thoughts and memories stirred up by the tendencies which we have become habituated arise in the mind. One after the other, each seems to vanish into the past, only to be replaced as the next, in its turn, becomes fleetingly present to the mind before giving itself away to future thoughts. The thoughts pick up momentum from the one before, and so the influence of a string of thought grows as time passes. This is called the chain of delusion. And so, it just kind of on and on and on of like naming this like very kind of familiar pattern. And then also in these very simple ways, abandoning any desire to do this or practice that. Recognize with certainty the nature of mind, the source of everything. when you recognize the unchanging natural state of mind in itself, remain in the continuum of that presence. That is the essence of all instruction. So it's like these very similar ideas of pointing out that there is this so-called natural state of mind, but that natural state of mind, it requires that we see through the chain of delusion. We see through these thoughts that arise, promising safety, promising intrigue, fantasy, and the stuff that arises. Wow. It's like the mind is just desperate for anywhere else to go. And I don't get that really, but it's like, what would you do if you had 6 months to live? I was like, what? Who asked that? I'm like, that's not a question. Back to practice. It's like, and then what if you had kept on dating your high school boyfriend? No, because it's so it's like something. Or it's just this, right? What are these questions? It's like I'm my own Cosmo quiz or something. It's oh my God. And it's super entertaining, but it's also super crazy making, right? And so I think that there's, the thing that really can happen, and I don't know, Grace, if this is somewhere towards where you're getting, that exhaustion, which might lead to, the revulsion word I'm not so sure about, but I really felt that, so it feels appropriate, the revulsion. And then this word, which is, the disenchantment. I am so tired of trying to rest my heart and mind on these ever-changing, grounds of what's happening out there. Because I realize that whatever happens out there is going to happen. My own personal mantra that I had to start was, just trust, be here, it will all unfold. Because I just wanted to know. But what if this? But what if that? It's just trust, be here, it will. And trust became kind of the much bigger theme. And again, could not get more cliche than just trust in the universe. I was like, oh my God, no. But it's yes. What else are you gonna do? Because it's, this idea, and that I started really hitting resistance to being there a couple of times, but especially in the first 10 days. What am I doing here? I don't want to be here. And it's you chose to be here. You actually arranged your entire life to be here. Qualitatively, it's awesome here. You have everything you need. You're good. Someone's teaching your class. There's no problem. There's no problem. But there was this, I was still hooked on this source of what makes me happy is out there. Why am I, I wasn't, and kind of feeling that my lack of control over what I was doing on a day-to-day basis meant that I couldn't be happy. And even though, I could still organize my schedule with a lot of flexibility. And the trust didn't come from, okay, now I trust myself because I've realized I'm great or strong or powerful, but I trust that trying to control doesn't work. And I trust that there has been people for thousands of years in this tradition of the Dharma and many others who have found comfort and ease and connection and some kind of freedom. And it really, that surrender, that's an insight, right? That's a concept. That's not meditating, but it's what allows, it's kind of, in some ways, the fruit of our meditation. Meditating is great, samadhi is great, being in states of absorption that feel blissful is great, but it's that clear seeing that can actually help us cut through and get, disenchanted with that habitual way of responding to the world. My other mantras, just for fun, one was no big deal. The other was not your business. Stop. Just stop and then back off. And a lot of these were just because I would get, it's just amazing to see how the next 5 minutes, 5 hours, and 5 days became such an obsession And folks who know me know that I do love planning, but this was like next level. It was like, and then tomorrow, if it's sunny, like it was just like the most mundane, because I didn't have to go grocery shopping, I didn't have to do dishwashing, I didn't have to work. Like, so to watch that full power of this mind habituated to planning and controlling, I was just like, stop it, back off. And also just that sense of losing equanimity entirely, losing big perspective because of that like narrowed focus. And it really made me see, and I've kind of alluded to this, that we need the practice for methods, but we actually really need the practice to help us change our overarching perspective of how we relate to the world, what actually matters, what isn't a source of well-being, and then kind of surrender and find devotion. So it's not just that you stop with like, okay, I got these methods down, I understand a bigger view. Like we actually have to, as is often said, we have to even bow lower in order to kind of find or feel that sense of trust and that place where you can feel, that true refuge that many of us come to the Dharma for. So I want to bring us back to bodhicitta and do a little closing practice with bodhicitta. So I kind of mentioned this, but meeting a lot of the doubt I was having there, uncertainty, is how I was really able to find the need for trust. I didn't get into, but maybe another time, how much, getting into fear and recognizing this core sense of fear, uncertainty, allowed me to really feel love. And really, it is in some ways heartbreak and like the heart broken open by both the beauty and the sorrow of the world that allows bodhicitta to become so natural. And bodhicitta, awakening for the sake of all beings, it can feel really abstract because like all beings, like even if we think of just this block, we start to kind of black out. We're like, how many floors are even in this building, right? And a teacher there led this beautiful practice, and I want to do a 2-minute version of it for you. And it's a way of just kind of orienting to, as we do our bodhicitta and dedication of merit, really getting a sense of deep connection with what it is like to imagine all beings being free. So just coming back into our awareness of breath in the body. And softening the eyes and the chest and the belly. And seeing if there's just some resonance or remnants of that metta from before. That sense of the heart that desires other beings to feel love and care, healthy and strong, safe and at ease. And it's like that little spark of bodhicitta. And we imagine extending bodhicitta to all beings who were born today. So for just a moment, imagining all beings who today is their first day sharing a birthday with me, all beings who were born today. May they be free from suffering, may they know ease, may they feel peace and love and supported. And then imagine all beings everywhere who are working in emergency rooms right in this moment. The nurses and the doctors and the x-ray techs and the janitors and the unit heads. all these beings who are meeting the suffering of the world. May they be protected, safe. May they feel love and connection. May they feel ease and supported. And then imagining all the beings in this moment who are sleeping around the world, in different time zones, different places, imagining and hoping that their rest is easeful and peaceful. Imagine sending all these beings who are sleeping everywhere around the world. May they all know peace and ease, feel healthy and strong. And then imagining all beings who are just today recovering from feeling sick or ill, unhealthy, unwell, coming back to a sense of vitality after what could have been a week or weeks or months of difficulty. Imagining all those beings, sending them joy and gladness, protection, ease. And then placing hands together in front of the chest, if that feels natural. And just breaking down every barrier and sending love and care, safety and protection to all beings. Each and every being, may our practice be of service and in service to all beings everywhere. May all beings everywhere experience peace and ease, love and belonging. May all beings everywhere find their way to freedom and ease. So wonderful to be with you all. Truly, 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 thank you for your practice. It's just such a beautiful dedication and commitment to be with these teachings. And yeah, really feel so grateful to be here with you all. I know we probably have some announcements. Sorry, I went a minute or two over. I do have cookies. Oh!